Good morning, Amherst. Today we're going to work on Solubility Rules Worksheet 8. This is a review. It's based on Table F, so as opposed to assigning this one, we're going to go over it together. Okay, so Worksheet 8, Solubility Rules. Refer to the Solubility Rules Guideline, yada yada yada. Look at Table F. Circle each of the soluble substances listed below. So we've got a bunch of substances here. Remember Table F, the large box on the left, these are soluble things, a few exceptions. The large box on the right, these are insoluble things, and the exceptions here are pretty much the rules over here. Alright, so right off the bat, sodium, sodium, potassium, lithium, and potassium again. These are all group 1 ions. Lithium, sodium, potassium is right below it on the periodic table. In a compound, group 1 ions form soluble compounds. There are no exceptions. So, circle the soluble ones. Yes, 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 yes. Group 1 compounds are always soluble. Circle each of the soluble substances in the list below. Well, look at this. Here's a nitrate, here's a nitrate, here's another nitrate, here's an ammonium, here's an ammonium. Nitrates are always soluble. Ammoniums are always soluble. There are no exceptions. Nitrates and ammoniums are always soluble. So right off the bat, yes, 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 and yes. State the rules. NO3 minus and NH4 positive form soluble compounds always. Number 3. So all of these will be circled as well. These are all soluble. Soluble substances here. Here's acetate in one variety. Here's acetate in another variety. Acetate, always soluble. So yeah, I'm going to circle the first two for sure. What's common about the next 3? Here's a carbonate, here's a carbonate, here's a carbonate. Carbonates are not soluble. Well, they are with group 1 or ammonium. Lead's not group 1. Iron's not group 1. Zinc is not group 1. These are not soluble. So, which ones are soluble? The first two. So, acetate forms soluble compounds, and carbonate is usually insoluble. I know I'm using a pencil today, but there's not much room to write. Number 4, circle each of the soluble substances listed below. All right, well, let's see. Sulfate, 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 and then a couple hydroxides. Sulfates are usually soluble, but there are a number of exceptions there. And hydroxides are usually insoluble, but once again, there are a number of exceptions. So let's take these one by one. Here's a sulfate with magnesium. Okay, sulfate. Magnesium is not an exception. Yeah, that's going to dissolve. Here's a sulfate. Sulfate, oh, but strontium is an exception. That's not going to dissolve. So strontium sulfate would not dissolve. Sulfate with barium. Here's sulfate. Barium's another exception. Barium sulfate would not dissolve. Here's another sulfate with copper. Sulfate. Copper's no exception. Copper 2 sulfate will dissolve. Hydroxides. Well, we've got zinc and we've got copper. Hydroxides do not like to dissolve. Zinc and copper are not exceptions. So those are insoluble. Circle the soluble ones. Okay, we did. State the rules. Sulfates are often soluble. but strontium plus 2 and barium plus 2 are exceptions. And I would say hydroxides, the OHs, are usually insoluble. Circle the soluble substances below. Alright, so you're looking here, well, right off the bat, here's group 1. That's soluble. And what's common between these? That's a halide, group 17. That's a halide, group 17. That's a halide, group 17. That's a halide. That's a halide. Alright, halides are usually soluble, but there are a few exceptions. So, bromide with calcium. Yes, that will dissolve. Lithium with anything is going to dissolve, and fluoride usually dissolves. So yeah, that's going to dissolve. Chloride with copper. Chloride usually dissolves. Copper is no exception. Yep. Iodide with silver. Oh, bingo. Silver. That will not dissolve. Chloride with lead, and that is lead plus 2. Here's chloride -1, -2. That's lead plus 2. Yeah, that's not going to dissolve. So the first 3 are your soluble. So state the rules. Halides are often soluble, but Ag positive and be Pb plus 2 are exceptions. Circle the following soluble substances. Well, this is an acetate. Acetates are soluble. Bingo. Sulfate. Sulfate is usually soluble, not with calcium. No. There's a hydroxide. Hydroxides don't like to dissolve. Silver is no exception. No. Rubidium is group 1. Group 1 always dissolves. Potassium is group 1. Group 1 always dissolves. Ammonium always dissolves. Bromide usually dissolves. Ammonium's no exception. Yes. Sodium is group 1. Dissolves. Hydroxides don't like to dissolve. But they will with barium. Notice it's an exception. Okay. That's definitely soluble. Here's a sulfate with lead. Sulfates dissolve, but not with lead plus 2. SO4 is -2, this is plus 2, that's not going to dissolve. Lithium is group 1. Lithium always dissolves. Chloride generally dissolves, but not with silver. This is the basis of photography. They like to ask this question a lot on things like the ACS. Silver compounds are the basis of photography, and they generally don't dissolve. Ammonium nitrate. Ammonium always dissolves, nitrate always dissolves. There are no exceptions there. That's highly soluble. Aluminum with phosphate. Phosphates don't like to dissolve. Aluminum is no exception. That's a no. Potassium is group 1, always soluble. Nitrates are always soluble, highly soluble. Magnesium with chloride. Chloride is a halide. Magnesium is no exception. That's soluble. Silver things don't like to dissolve. Bromide would dissolve, but not with silver. Insoluble. Here's a sulfide. Sulfides don't like to dissolve. And zinc is no exception. So no. Cesium is group 1, always soluble. Fluoride, halides are usually soluble. Potassium is group 1, always soluble, and chlorates are always soluble. No exceptions there, highly soluble. Carbonates don't like to dissolve, and look out for silver, usually doesn't dissolve. So carbonates don't like to dissolve, and silver's no exception. Don't circle it. Most soluble in number 7, well, they're all carbonates. They're mostly insoluble, but sodium is group 1. Least soluble. Hydroxides don't like to dissolve, but group 1, they'll all dissolve. Magnesium is group 2. Not going to happen. Most concentrated means a lot dissolved. If it's concentrated solution, you've got a lot of solute in there. So we've got a sulfate, and, well, an acetate sticking out there. Sulfates generally dissolve, but not with strontium, not with barium, Not with lead +2. Acetates always dissolve, so you're going to be able to dissolve the most solute there. Bingo. A precipitate would be an insoluble compound at number 10. What doesn't dissolve? Ammonium always dissolves. Hydroxides don't like to dissolve. Iron is no exception. That's looking pretty good. Ammonium always dissolves, and group 1 always dissolves, yes. Which is an aqueous salt that would react with dilute sodium hydroxide to produce a precipitate. Once again, an insoluble compound. So you're talking about double replacement reactions here. KNO3 with NaOH, you're going to get NaNO3 and KOH. They're both soluble, group 1, group 1. So NH4NO3 with NaOH, you're going to get NH4OH and NaNO3. Ammonium's always soluble, nitrate's always soluble. AgNO3, nitrate's always dissolved with NaOH. Okay, here we go. Silver with hydroxide, that's your precipitate. NaNO3, that's highly soluble. So we have a winner here already, but just to finish it out, Li2SO4 and NaOH. If you cross it, you're going to get Na2SO4, group 1's always soluble, and LiOH, group 1's always soluble. So precipitate is going to be your silver compound, silver hydroxide when it does double replacement there. All right, that's a quick lesson today. We've done this worksheet, exact one, in the past. We've got Regents Review coming up. I'm going to create another assignment on that one. I think I'm actually going to collect this one. This will probably be our first graded assignment for the 4th marking period. Stay tuned.